Women in Afghanistan have been facing numerous challenges since the Taliban returned to power in 2021. Girls and women in the war-torn country have no access to education, employment and public spaces. The Taliban rulers are dictating what women must wear, how they should travel, workplace segregation, and even what kind of cell phones women should have. Recently, at the UN Security Council quarterly meeting, members discussed the situation in Afghanistan, in which the rights of women and girls took center stage, and called for a resolution labeling the treatment of Afghan women by the Taliban as gender apartheid. Ever since taking control of Afghanistan in August 2021, the Taliban continues to muzzle women's rights in the nation. Over the span of just 2 years, the group has systematically marginalized women from public life. Recently, at the UN Security Council quarterly meeting, members discussed the situation in Afghanistan, in which the rights of women and girls took center stage.
The Taliban's attack on women's rights...
Seema Sami Bahaus, Executive Director of UN Women, stated that the last time the Security Council met on Afghanistan, it was reported that there were more than 50 edicts and decrees restricting women's rights. More have been added since.
The last time the security met on Afghanistan, it was reported that there were more than 50 edicts and decrees restricting women's rights. More have been added since. The number of families living in poverty has nearly doubled in 2 years. More than 2/3 of people in Afghanistan require humanitarian assistance to survive. 20 million face acute hunger, the majority of whom are women and girls, and the cost of the food basket has gone up. Household debt has increased 6-fold. The Taliban's attack on women's rights exacerbates this, pushing women out of job and opportunities to generate income and out of the education they need to be part of Afghanistan's future.
The Taliban are not simply failing.
International human rights lawyer Karima Benaun, a civil security representative at the meeting, called for a resolution labeling the treatment of Afghan women by the Taliban as a gender apartheid. She stated that the oppression of women is central to their system of governance and a core part of their philosophy.
Many governments, UN officials, and experts, including the Secretary General himself, have labeled the situation gender apartheid. Along with many Afghan women advocates, I believe the gender apartheid approach offers one of the most promising ways forward. The Taliban are not simply failing to uphold women's rights. Oppression of women is central to their system of governance.
Earlier this month, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, accused Afghanistan's Taliban of a shocking level of oppression of women and girls and said human rights in the country were in a state of shock. Turk's speech coincided with the publication of a UN report covering the period March 2022 to August 2023, which noted a systematic regression of the rule of law and human rights in Afghanistan, particularly with regard to the rights of women and girls.
The shocking level of oppression of Afghan women and girls is immeasurably cruel. Afghanistan has set a devastating precedent as the only country in the world where women and girls are denied access to secondary and higher education. Restrictions are becoming increasingly severe, quelling women and girls' fundamental freedoms, effectively confining them to the four walls of their homes, to invisibility.
Afghanistan faces grave difficulties, with de-facto rulers ignoring world leaders' demands and instead blaming the West for the country's challenges. The Taliban rulers refuse to acknowledge that a more moderate ideology could have led to a better situation in Afghanistan. A century ago, the women in Afghanistan were free. They enjoyed the right to education, right to political participation, and the right to movement. Even in the 1970s, in Kabul universities, women made up more than 60% of students and they were equally represented in several public institutions. But today, under the Taliban rule, Afghan women have been deprived of fundamental rights, let alone having a life of dignity.